Good, it's recording.
Okay.
All right, you're on.
All right. First of all, I have no problem keeping it completely up, but is it okay if it's down?
What do you guys want to do?
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
I'm vaccinated,
off.
boosted, all that, been tested. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Because I think we miss a lot of communication when we can't see each other's faces. So, my name is Kat Wilson. As your teacher said, right now I work for the City of San Jose as a policy advisor for Mayor Sam Ricardo. But I did a lot
Attention
of
high school teachers.
Sorry. I forgot to warn you
Please take
about that.
attendance and check student Darcy QR codes at this time.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, so I did a lot of other stuff before that. So, as Mr. Gallagher was saying, I got asked to come speak to you guys, and so kind of not like I'm this major public speaker, but I always kind of ask what's the purpose of this speech or whatever. And he said, I guess you guys are kind of at a point right now where you're kind of seeing what you want to do with the rest of your lives, or kind of service, leadership, purpose, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's for me, I kind of thought about it's important. I always ask the question why? Why do I do what I do? And I really like this quote by Alice Walker. She's a renowned novelist and poet. She speaks a lot. She's actually the first African American woman who won the Pulitzer Prize in 1972. And I just like this quote. Activism is my rent for living on this planet, and I think it's a beautiful picture. So that is one of the reasons why I do what I do. And this other picture here is my family. I've got my stepdad, my mom, stepmom, sisters, a brother that my dad adopted later in life, and I do it for them too. I want to leave the planet kind of better for people that are going to come after me and all that kind of stuff. And I do it for this guy here too. That's my husband Nick. And we've been married for about 3 years. He's like my biggest fan. Actually, I told him, before coming here, I was nervous. Of course, I'm socially awkward. I get nervous when you've got to speak in public. I'm concerned what other people think of me. All those things as a human being. So he's my biggest fan. Like he said, just speak from your heart. So that's what I'm going to kind of do. And we challenge each other just to kind of evolve as a person. So I'm excited to see who he's going to be as an individual. He is the same as me. And but we're at Yosemite there, so I do it for the planet. The natural world's a pretty amazing place. I live up in Boulder Creek right now, and right by the creek and beautiful redwood trees and stuff. And so it's I feel pretty blessed to live on this planet in this time that we're living in. And so I do it for that. And then right here, I know this is a picture was taken by Apollo 17, the last Apollo mission, in 1972. And for a long time, it was the only picture that we had of Earth fully illuminated. It's hard to believe, especially now, that just kind of seems like common. We have satellite images, we have all this stuff. But for a long time, people really had no clue kind of what Earth looked like, or even could envision what it looked like, because our perspective was, right here on this Earth. And so that really kind of inspired people, in the early 70s to start looking at our planet and what we should be doing. And obviously here we are 50 years later, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So that sucks, but this is called the Blue Marble, is what this picture is called. And then I like this picture. So first of all, this slide deck, a while ago I was trained as a climate reality leader by ex-Vice President Al Gore. He has a training that he goes through, so this is his slide deck. I pared it way down. There's about 200 slides that he put together. There's about 20 on here with a few extra that I added. But this one really kind of goes to show what our sky is. We look up at the sky and it looks, and first of all, I know you guys know what climate change is. I'm pretty much kind of zipping through this because this is what gives me purpose. This is what inspires me. And I think it's very, very basic. So when and if you're talking to people, it can kind of you can just explain kind of what this is in a simple way. So I'm not going to get into all the science and all that kind of stuff about it, but this picture is good because it shows really how thin our sky is, how thin our atmosphere is. And apparently if you were to drive a car, freeway speed, going straight up in the air, you would hit the end of the atmosphere in 5 minutes. So it's really, really a kind of a thin kind of layer that we've got going there. And just the next couple of slides are some basic kind of descriptions of how global warming happens, how our environment warms. And so radiation from the sun, as you know, comes in through the atmosphere in the form of light waves, and there's greenhouse gas in that carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and water vapor, and all of those are opaque, so they kind of reflect different wavelengths. Some of it's absorbed and some of it is radiated back. Most of the radiation is absorbed, and that's a good thing because this planet wouldn't be habitable if we didn't have sun warming. So it's not like CO2 is a bad thing in and of itself. But most of it's absorbed, and then some of it is bounced back. It's radiated back into space in the form of light waves. And when everything is working well, enough is trapped, about half is trapped and half is re-emitted back into space, and we're in a good place. So, however, as the CO2 concentration increases, more of that is trapped. And right now, you hear a lot of people talking about the increase in weather is just a change in weather. We've had many times through the year ice ages and all of that, and that's true, but those changes happen very gradually over time, and the amount of CO2 in our atmosphere is much, much higher than it has ever been since they could record ice core samples in millions of years. So there is a direct correlation to the burning of fossil fuels. That's where it comes from, and just kind of 152 million tons of man-made global emissions are emitted in every day. So it's a lot. Like we act as if it's like open sewer, and we can just, and probably at some point in time, I imagine, there wasn't an understanding really of what was happening. Like I said, it's been a long time, but we know kind of what we're doing, so that's why we need to do something about it. So this is just some of the sources of greenhouse gases. The biggest ones, of course, that contribute to our warming is transportation, buildings, and that's electricity, the building materials, industrial processes, agriculture, that kind of thing. But this just gives you one little graph here, so it just kind of goes to show, really since the Industrial Revolution, kind of where our emissions really have gone up, and the billion metric tons of carbon is with that on the left-hand side. It's, it just kind of, to me, it looks obvious, like that is, since we started burning fossil fuel, that's really kind of when it took off. So, okay, so first of all, just to back up a little bit, so I'm going to talk a little bit, like I said, about, back to the reason why I am here, kind of background on climate change, the causes of it. I already kind of told you why I do kind of what I do, and then most importantly, towards the end, I'm going to tell you opportunities that you guys can get involved, especially as young people. A lot of the organizations are kind of more adult driven, but there's a lot of like youth organizations that are doing really exciting things. So just kind of give you some ideas of ways that you can, if this is something that resonates with you, that you can get involved. So obviously we know rising temperatures is an effect, and I'm just going to go through a couple slides here, different parts of the world. Here's a picture of Baghdad, and they in 2020, I believe it was, they had their highest record, and if you think about too, like in other parts of the world, we're pretty lucky that we have air conditioning and that kind of stuff here, and there are a lot of parts of the world, they don't. So this picture in Algeria here, they have not only, they have like a record heat wave, but also a lot of people, died from heat and lack of food also. Just another record in Japan, and then in Los Angeles. So just some pictures of, I think pictures are good, kind of just depicts like the impact of those high temperatures. So let's just go through these real quick. So segue into flooding. So there's the heat, and then there's also the impact of severe storms and flooding. And so yeah, now they occur 4 times more than they did back in 1980. Picture of Pakistan, and they broke their all-time record. It rained 13.5, 13.6 inches in 24 hours. A lot of devastation there. And then the flooding, the summer flooding in China, affected 55 million people in 27 of the 34 provinces. Picture in South Korea. Unusually heavy monsoon rains caused flooding both in the South and the North Korea. And this picture, yes, this picture here in Nigeria was the flooding, and then also it destroyed 25% of their country's rice harvest. So there's a lot of people that starved to death due to that also. Yeah, and it just seems like it's always the poor that suffer the biggest impact. You know, Pope Francis talks about this a lot. He did like an encyclical a few years ago, talked about kind of as, you know, spiritual people, kind of the responsibility that we all have to help the ones that are affected the most. And just a little quote from him. And then just coming, you know, kind of circling back home. So this is a picture of flooding that happened in Tennessee and Mississippi. New Orleans. And then, I don't know if you guys remember this a few years back, 5 years ago, right here in San Jose, we had some flooding. So it was kind of wild, like when you think about, you know, right here in our backyard. And then just more of the impact, again, of flooding in our food production. Let's go through two more impacts, fires and health threats, and then we're kind of talking about what we're kind of doing in San Jose and how you guys can get involved, and we'll kind of open up to questions. But yeah, so fires, as I mentioned, so I was, I turned that off, I swear. I'm sorry.
That happens to me all the
It's a
time.
big no-no, huh?
That's okay. Maybe it's your husband encouraging you.
You know, it's into there. Yeah, so since 1972, the average area that's burned in California has increased by 500% since that time. So, and I can tell you, as my experience as a firefighter, you know, I could see like year over year, like fire seasons are getting longer and they're getting more devastating. They burn hotter. I mean, it was just in my, so I was a firefighter for 14 years, and in that time, you know, every year, it's just getting more and more intense. And then some of these pictures are just pretty crazy. So we brought these in here. This is from Oroville. And, you know, 5 of the 6 largest fires in California burned in 2020. So this is this year. That was this slide deck is from last year. There's a picture in Butte County. And then this, I don't know if you guys remember, just kind of back when we had those fires in 2020, just that the sky was like orange. And this picture right here was taken, you know, at noon in San Francisco. And this picture in Paradise, so the Camp Fire, you know, killed 86 people and burned more than 14,000 structures. Actually, my in-laws, my husband's brother and his family, they were there when it happened. Like, I remember him kind of telling the story. He was out drinking his coffee, getting his kids ready for school, or had to drop them off. And by the time he looked around, he saw some smoke, called his wife, and it was like the whole hillside was on fire. So it was like a nightmare, really, kind of getting out of it. They lost everything. A lot of people, you know, lost everything. So we're still rebuilding. So it is devastating, you know, for many aspects. And then just segueing real quick from the fires to the sea level rise. So this is just a picture of a parking garage in Miami, and you know, due to just the sea level rise and storm surge, so as storms come in and the wind pushes the water, it goes inland. And this is just an example of that, like due to like sea level rise, just the general level is higher. This is kind of a normal occurrence when they have, since octopus found his way into the underground parking garage. And then lastly, just threats to health. So there are, you know, increases because of pollution, increases of asthma, heat stress, obviously, and then a lot of, just because the changes in the climate, a lot of like vector-borne and food-borne and water-borne illnesses are more prevalent than they are. So there's just a lot of impacts, different mental health, you know, stresses, threats to health. And then I just put this in because it's like, you know, it sounds like a lot of bad news, right? You know, since I remember when I first started kind of learning about climate change and stuff, it was almost like too depressing to even like deal with. You know, like, what am I supposed to do about it? You know, so part of me wanted to just, you know, turn the other way and kind of assume someone else is taking care of it. But then, you know, I started learning more, and you know, the good news is where the optimism comes in is there are solutions at hand, and there are things to do, and there are ways that we can get involved. And so that's where the optimism comes in. So we do have the solutions at hand. Just kind of one of the couple little stats. So globally, wind supply could produce the worldwide electricity consumption of all of the world 40 times over, just wind. This picture right here. So this is in England, and this is where the coal burning revolution began hundreds of years ago, and they actually right now are generating more than 18 times as much power from wind as they are in coal. So it's possible. And then it's pretty crazy to think, so the sun, amount of sun that comes in, yeah, enough solar energy reaches Earth every hour to satisfy the global consumption in an entire year. So that's, so the challenges obviously are how are we gonna harness that power? How do we reuse it? How do we store power, you know, for times that the sun is not shining and all that? So that is like the challenge that hopefully like people are working on now and hopefully you all can solve when you get older and help us out. And then emissions, like 70% of all of the emissions come from cities. So that's really where local action begins. And that's where kind of we come in. So we'll just give some stats here. So that's where you do the, yeah, like I said, so 70% comes from the cities and towns, and that's where we need to really be doing kind of most of our, put our emphasis on. And so this is just the cover to the climate smart plan that we have. So San Jose adopted this climate smart plan in 2018. The city council approved it, and it really lays out like what we're doing to address climate change. And it's really one of the first detailed plans that was in line with the International Paris Agreement to keep warming below 2 degrees Celsius. And so to get there, we set goals for energy and water and transportation. And there's just a picture of San Jose. So this year, actually, San Jose became America's first largest city to establish a goal to reach carbon neutrality by 2030. So it's pretty ambitious. Some of the strategies that we're going to look at to get there is to grow sustainably, to green the grid, to electrify the economy, and then adapt for drought. So this right here, you guys have probably heard in the news and stuff about the Google Village, the downtown village. It's been in the news. So this is a rendering of what that's going to look like. It's called Downtown West. And just this past year, May 25th, the council unanimously approved that project. After 3 years of stakeholder engagement, they had lots of community meetings to kind of just, you know, come to an agreement on what that's going to look like. But we really need to kind of quit building in the open space, you know. So we need to densify our downtown core, and so there's going to be more of these sprouting up. I mean, I think probably when you are, you know, my age, or maybe a little younger, you're going to see a lot of these, you know, throughout the downtown. So it's really where people can work and play and live without really having to get in the car too much. And then along those lines, so to densify our downtown, to not be building out in the open space, this is a picture of Coyote Valley. So this is down, if you're going down 101 South, kind of you're looking off. And this little sliver is nestled between the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Diablo Range. It's an important thoroughfare for animals to go back and forth. And also a really good way for us to absorb water, to avoid flooding, just different natural solutions for flood control. And then there were 2 ballot measures that were approved. So most recently, a thing called Measure T, and it enabled San Jose with the Open Space Authority to purchase 900 acres here. So that's kind of really the key, is we not just we as the city, but the city and then other nonprofits and other land trust groups, they purchase the land. So then that's how, and then they're basically restored and protected in forever, you know. So they're not going to be subject to development later on. So this is protected forever, this space. And then we talked about, you know, one of the ways that we need to reach carbon neutrality is to green the grid. And so what this is requires finding zero emission sources and alternatives to burning fossil fuels. So San Jose Clean Energy in 2018, the city launched, it's called a Community Choice Energy Group. So all of you that live in San Jose, you're automatically enrolled in it. And right now, 92% of the electricity that's generated or, you know, sold to people in San Jose comes from renewable sources. The plan is eventually get to 100. But so we buy power from green sources, and then PG&E transmits. So you still get a bill that says PG&E, but if you took a look at the bill, there's a line item for San Jose Clean Energy. So that's one way we're driving down emissions. And then to continue to electrify our fossil fuel. Yeah, so we recently, it's right too, we passed, it's called a REACH code, so which is part of a building code. We recently require that all new construction, all new buildings have to be all electric, so there's no gas infrastructure into new buildings. The work ahead, obviously, is to electrify all of the existing buildings and doing it in an equitable way. So that's what we're working on now, is to retrofit houses and businesses. So this is just a thing that we launched through Own Connect. It's a software platform. It's pretty cool. I've got this installed also. And so we engaged over 3,000 residents in San Jose, and it's a way to reduce your peak energy demand. So if you would install it on your phone, it's pretty easy, kind of walks you through the steps. And it'll tell you like between 4 and 9 if you can power down certain things, like how much you can conserve, how much money you can save. And we were able to reduce emissions by 28 tons over the year, with 14,000 kilowatt hours. And then the largest source of emissions is transportation. So it is our buses, our trains, our planes, our cars, all that kind of stuff. And this San Jose Electric Mobility Roadmap is just a roadmap to get there. It focuses on infrastructure and public transit and just EVs in general. And so the VTA, the Valley Transportation Authority, they just celebrated the opening of the BART station down in Berryessa, and so we just broke ground to start tunneling to get it actually into San Jose. So hopefully soon you'll have a BART station there on Santa Clara Street. But we can't just get there with transportation. There's still a car. So kind of promoting EV cars and infrastructure are also important. And we actually are the highest rated EV deployment in the nation, the highest big city having EV cars. And right now we've got more than 2,000 new public car chargers spread throughout the city so that people can plug in. And then if people that don't want to drive, we've also got 400 miles of protected bike lanes, so unrated bikes. And then we can't talk about our shared environmental future without talking about water. We know that we just kind of recently came through a lot of rains, but it barely made a dent. Well, I shouldn't say barely. It did make a dent in the drought, but we're still really in drought, and that's going to be kind of the cycle that's going to be continuing. So in San Jose, we have a recycled water infrastructure that's in place. It's reliable, it's proven. We have an advanced water purification plant that's currently producing 8 million gallons a day. And so it purifies the water, it puts it back into the ground, and then it's pumped out later. So that's called indirect potable reuse. We don't have a way yet where, it's going to come in the future. I'm just telling you that there will be a time when we're going to treat wastewater and we're going to drink it. Like that is the direction we're going. Orange County, that's how they supply all their 100 million people in their city. We're moving towards that direction, and we're going to have to, because there's going to be less and less and less water. So, but right now we've got recycled water. We recycle all of the golf courses and parks and schools. A lot of the schools are watered with non-potable water. So just got to continue more of that and invest more in that. And so the biggest thing, kind of what you can do, So I always say, you find your people, be open-minded, and kind of ask the right questions and stuff. Like I was going to say this at the beginning, but I know if I can kind of impart one thing on you, a couple things, is just to remember also that we're human beings, not human doings. So I know I got trapped kind of probably when I was your age too, thinking like I had to accomplish something or be somebody to be worthy or whatever. And kind of long story short, but I went through a lot of trials and tribulations and mental health issues and depression and suicide attempts and all that kind of stuff, trying to kind of get to where I'm at, and so there's nothing wrong with having goals and aspirations to try to get there, but I would just really encourage you not to get so tied up in I gotta be somebody or be something to be valued. You're all valued just by being here, but we're here for a short amount of time, so I always try to what do I want to do with the time I have on this earth? And so that's kind of what inspires me to do what I do. And I would just encourage kind of all of you to find that, whatever that is, and surround yourself with people that think like you. Like I said kind of a while ago, when I first learned about climate change and all that, it was pretty depressing and didn't seem like anybody cared. So I started surrounding myself with people that did care, and that kind of gives me energy. I work for a lot of really smart people that I'm inspired by and intimidated by all the time, so I also think it's good to be around people that kind of do push you to know more. If you feel kind of insecure around people, that's a good thing, because that's kind of driving you to kind of learn more, and I feel like that all the time, so, but it always comes back to you kind of doing the best you can and surrounding yourself with people that, that will inspire you. And so, I like this is younger kids than you guys, but, there's younger people, all over the country, all over the world are really rising up, and I just feel like we all have an obligation kind of to be on the same side here and try to help. So that's in Tennessee. It was some young people at a climate march. These next couple slides are just a rally that we had. It was like on Earth Day. This is down at City Hall, so I just think I took these pictures. I just thought it was really kind of cool. There's a lot of like, younger kids here. I like that. Save the Earth now. Homework can wait. That's a funny little. So there's people that care. These little guys were just cruising around in the parade also. That was the turnout we had there. My husband and I went to Washington D.C. There was a big climate march, so we went there. About climate justice and jobs. So yeah, I like this quote too, join those who are using their voices, their votes, they can vote, and their choices to fight for their future, their community, and their world. So so you might want to write these down, or I can give them to your teacher after, but Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action, that's a group here, local group. And they work on empowering younger people to kind of work on the solutions and to get involved. So that's one group. If it's local, you can go to that website and get involved. This next one's called Youth for Climate. It's another one. Their mission is to empower youth to become climate leaders, working together for an equitable, sustainable, and resilient future. And then, so the Climate Reality Project, the group that I got trained through, there's a youth climate corps that they also train, so that's another opportunity. And then, so just like, use your voice, your vote, and your choice. Speak truth to power like your world depends on it, because your world does depend on it. And I don't have a slide for this, I just like this quote too, change the world. But one other opportunity that I just kind of found out about last night is San Jose, as far as like getting involved with like local government, they've got something called a youth commission. And you were either just to Google San Jose Youth Commission, there's a person that's kind of assigned by your county council person in each of our 10 districts, and then there's one at large. So there's 11 people usually on this commission. There's one opening right now, but there's always constant. I think it's a 2-year term that's renewed. But it is a good way to kind of get involved in local government. It's a forum for young people to kind of talk about what matters to young people and kind of your own ideas and for solutions instead of like the government kind of telling you what to do. It's a way to kind of get involved also. So that's all I got. So I'm open for questions or whatever, but.
Yeah, go for it, questions.
How long, you said 14 years you were a firefighter. Did you fight any of the fires that you talked about?
Yeah, so I was a firefighter for 14 years before I came to the city. And so I worked in like Cupertino, Los Gatos, Los Altos, Morgan Hill. Most of the fires, most of the calls I went on were medical emergencies, accidents, house fires, that kind of thing. I did get deployed to San Diego years ago, and I also got deployed to Chico when it burned, not this last time, but the time before. And it's pretty wild. And I tell the story sometimes because it gives me chills, and I stood out from it, but the impact of it. So we arrived on this one house. What we did is called structure protection. So we would go through the neighborhoods, and if we could protect a structure and kind of move stuff away or protect the fire from approaching on the house, we would do that, and then go from house to house. Well, the people were like had to escape so quickly that they left their dog chained to like a pole or something. So this poor dog was obviously dead, but it was just like that. There was like people that tried to hide in the bathtub and cover themselves up. I mean, it was horrifying. So the impact of all that stuff. So yes, I did see a lot of that. So yeah.
That's crazy. What about your house in Boulder Creek last year? You guys were there, right?
Yeah, so we bought our house in December after the fires.
Oh, after the fires.
Yeah, so we were kind of we've been looking for a house, and we were contemplating, do we really still want to live out there? But we live, in a pretty safe location, I guess, and it's just kind of a risk you take, but we were spared. Yeah.
All right.
How are the floods and the global warming connected?
So when the atmosphere warms and the water is, you can kind of think of it as, kind of layman's terms, it's like thicker, it's going to absorb more moisture. And so when I know it's kind of counterintuitive, and so when there are storms, there are more intense storms. So the water is holding more water vapor, and so when there are downpours, there's just more of it.
Oh, okay. And I actually have one more. So I've actually talked to my dad a little bit about this, at least about the car one, because he's a car guy and he loves cars. So he's a gas kind of car guy, and like we're and we actually have an electric car now. But the thing is, his thing is like, where does the battery go? Like, doesn't that hurt the environment too? Like, I mean, I agree with you, don't get me wrong, but like, my dad's just like, he just likes the older models better. But his thing is like, where does the battery go after you, like, either, let's say the battery dies or something, you get a new battery, where does that battery go versus burning the gas, right? So like, yeah, that's kind of my question.
And that's a great question, and I think it's good just to kind of contemplate that all of these solutions that we have, there are other consequences,
Yeah.
right? So, and then, so to answer your question directly, there are, and I can't think of the companies offhand right now, but there are companies and people that are working on recycling batteries, on reusing those batteries, because if I understand correctly, to have a lithium battery in a car, it's got to be a certain amount, it's, you know, kind of the lifespan is a certain thing.
Yeah.
But then you can refurbish and repurpose those for mini grids, you can refurbish them for home, so there is a recycling process, because you're right, like, where do these things go after?
Yeah,
So
I
that
mean,
is
he's an electrician, so he does all that kind of stuff, but he's just confused, or I mean, I am,
Yeah,
about where does it go, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
so there is, so if, even if you want to kind of learn more about
Yeah.
like recycling of lithium batteries, kind of where, but there is that,
Mhm.
and then you kind of made me think of something else, just the production of lithium, right? So
Mhm.
it's like we mine the stuff in other
Mhm.
countries, most likely, or always.
Mhm.
And then we kind of leave this devastation in other parts of
Right.
the world, so that impact on that. So there's a company called Lilac in Oakland, and they're working on, they have this, I'm not a scientist, but they're these ion beads that they use, and brine ponds, so brine from the salt water, we have these things at like wastewater treatment facilities. So right now, the brine, you can get lithium from brine, but it takes those brine ponds to evaporate, to do that process takes many, 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 many years, from what I understand. They've got a technology that speeds that process up so they can get lithium from the brine. So it's kind of like a win-win. We have this byproduct of water recycling that we need to know what to do with, because we can't just put that brine back in the ocean because of imbalance, and there's an issue there. So there is, and that's the exciting thing about being a young person too, I think, is you can be kind of like at the forefront and kind of coming up with solutions to some of these problems, because we need to green our grid. We need to stop burning fossil fuels, because there is just the fact that we can't keep spewing fossil fuels, and we can't keep having them greater and greater, you know, floods and heat waves and, you know, mass migrations of people that can no longer live where they're living. There's just so many other societal problems that come, you know, in that. So it's been a long answer to your question, but yeah.
Oh, good, yeah, thank you.
Joshua, you said something, and Tyler?
I like a question when it goes with the carbon emission neutrality, like what exactly is that? Is it like zero emission or just like balancing the emission?
Good question. So carbon neutrality is not zero emissions. So it means that as a city, you know, the city of San Jose were to be carbon neutral. That means we are producing green energy the same level that we're burning. So it's a way to get there. We eventually have to get to zero emissions and not do any of that at all. But if we're producing, kind of think of the grid, you know, because it is kind of all connected. If you're producing, you know, I'll say 1 gigawatt of power a year or something, and you're putting green energy onto the grid, then you can't be burning or emitting more than that. That makes sense? So it's kind of, it's a balancing out. But the ultimate goal is to get to zero emissions and not to use any kind of like fossil fuel based electricity. But it's going to take a while to get there. We're not going to be able to just stop, you know, burning gasoline today, unfortunately.
Through the use of like electric cars, have you started to see like an impact in like climate change?
So I'm just kind of thinking how to. Well, that's yeah. So yes, the answer is because so one of the teams that I work with at San Jose, the data analysts. So they measure all of the GHG that San Jose emits per year. They take an inventory, and then they, you know, it was like whatever it was, and I don't know the number at this point. And then once we started like having all these EVs and started having this other green electricity alternatives, those emissions went down. So there is an impact, but that's how they measure it, because you can say it's a good thing without actually measuring it. But so there is a way of doing that. It has had an impact already. And I don't know if you probably heard in the news also, by 2045, it's going to be illegal to sell a gasoline-powered car after 2045. So all new cars sold and produced in California have to be electric. We're not going to start taking people's cars away or nothing like that. But,
I was about to say, my dad's
tell your
in
dad.
trouble, man.
Yeah, so we're not going to do that. We can't be making any, you know, new gasoline-powered cars.
what kind of things do you like tell the mayor? Like, kind of what's your job? What do you try as the advisor?
So, yes, that's a good question. So it's interesting also, I was gonna say kind of some things to kind of leave with also, like, always be open for opportunity. The reason I say that is, I didn't see a job listing for a policy advisor in the mayor's office. Like, I got to know the mayor through my climate advocacy, through my disagreeing with him, through my showing up to city council and arguing with him, through letters and phone calls. And there was one thing in particular, when we went to that all-electric for new construction, there was an issue with these things called bloom boxes. So that's a way of, anyway, we won't get into all of that, but I disagreed with him on this thing. So I had a conversation with him, and I gave him all kinds of data and information, research I had done in other places. And he asked me after that conversation, would you want a job at City Hall? You know, so it was a time later, his chief of staff called me and asked me to come work there. But that's, so it is pushing him, like he likes to say, I want an antenna outside of this building. So my job as a climate sustainability policy advisor is for looking for ways outside of our building, other cities, other towns, maybe things that we haven't thought about. And so specifically, I advise him on issues related to water and now getting electrification. So
Yeah.
that's the two things. And that just looks like, you know, I have some discussions directly with him, but it's also like, you know, we work in teams, so it's kind of like we're all kind of working towards the same thing, and that's the clinical area that I advise him on.
So with everyone going to electric cars, is there a chance of electricity being more expensive to charge your house and your cars, and you know, going up in prices and causing problems?
Yeah, and I can tell you right now, so I have an all-electric house, and my bill is very high right now, but that's the decision kind of I made because of the electricity is too expensive right now. There is, I just watched a webinar on EVs and all of that, and so first of all, natural gas prices are only going to go up. So electricity, I'm just going to think how deep to get into this, because there is like, so if you have solar panels on your house and you're producing power and then you buy it back, and they kind of credit your account, all of that thing. So there's discussions right now at the Public Utility Commission on decisions on how to change those rates, because right now, if you produce more than you use, you can sell it back to PG&E and you get credit. So actually, this person that I know was given this class, his electricity bill is only $70 a month, and he's got like a big house, got an EV and all that, but he's got panels, he's got batteries, so there's gonna have to be those solutions. But it's, right now it's not perfect, you know, so right now, taking that jump, it is going to be more expensive. However, the energy efficiency of all of those electric appliances, your induction cooktops, heat pump water heaters, and the way you heat your air and your water is more efficient and does last longer. So, and right now, just the administration that we have, both at the state and national level, there's a lot of incentives. So there's a lot of money out there to get rebates and stuff to upgrade. So there might be a kind of a painful point for a while where things are more expensive, but it can be controlled a lot more than like natural gas prices are going to be like through the roof. You know.
Because you have like a direct line to the mayor and stuff, are you, and because your background in firefighting and stuff in California and just all that kind of stuff, are you advising him on fires too, because that's more about like climate and all that kind of stuff, or is it like a totally different thing? And also like, what do you, because of your background in that, like, what's the next step in making sure that we don't have another crazy outburst and fires? And like, I know we still do, it's California, but like, you know what I mean? Like, how do we prevent that from basically the whole entire state being on fire again?
Yeah. Well, like you said, we're going to have low fires.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
One of the big ways, so I don't advise him on fire safety per
Okay.
se. He does have a team that actually kind of works on that.
Okay.
But the biggest way we can not be victims of that is not building out on our hillsides, right? So you look at places like Paradise and other places,
Mhm.
their homes were kind of right in the thick of it. So when there was a fire, it burned the whole town down. So by keeping development into the downtown kind of core, that's one way. And then there are, our parks department at the county level and at the state level and the city level, they do a lot of like weed abatement, try to kind of, there's a lot of homeless encampments, try to like kind of deal with, those issues. So it's another area really, but that's kind of the way that they're addressing that.
Yeah, I don't want to take too much more of your time. You're so generous. Here's my question for you though too, is that, have you seen other groups, like agencies, besides the climate impact, those ones you listed, which I'll get from you, that are doing some things, like our city forest is helping build the urban forest, you know, and students can go and do things with them. Are there any other agencies like that that you've seen or worked with that are doing some other things, like greening, you know,
Yeah.
doing things like that?
So our city forest is a good one,
Yeah.
and then also San Jose Conservation Corps. They work with kind of more at-risk youth. They have a lot of different programs and stuff for young people to kind of get training, get jobs, and then they do a lot of like the weed abatement, the trail maintenance, and that kind of thing. But there's other opportunities. But those are the two that kind of came to mind.
And then did you work for Guadalupe Park?
No,
No, but they do things like that too, don't they? Do they?
probably.
Yeah, okay, I just
Yeah.
didn't know. All right, well, thank you. Round of applause, please. Turn the camera on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really cool. Some people in here are thinking about